another episode of the Heavy Duty Podcast. With me, as always, is Chris, and I'm Jeremy. And today we have a special guest with us, Mr. Lucas Deal.
Hello.
Lucas, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your background, please?
I am the content director and editor for Trucks Parts Service. If you don't know TPS, we are a media brand here in the trucking industry, and we exclusively cover the medium and heavy duty commercial truck dealer, trailer dealer, and aftermarket sectors. So we're a little different from some of the other media brands you see in the industry that we're not focused on the fleet. Obviously, there's some fleet related news we cover, but our audience is very much the dealer, the dealership, the dealer operations, truck dealer, trailer dealer, like I said, and then the aftermarket shops and parts distributors that support the industry. And our focus is helping businesses in those two channels run their companies more effectively and efficiently, be profitable, be successful. So we do a lot of articles on what's happening in the news, what's happening with truck orders, trailer orders, used trucks, parts and service demand. We do a lot of technical how to make technicians more efficient. We'll do things on throughput, productivity, operations and inventory management, recruitment and retention, marketing. Whatever the topic is that would help a small business in our industry, a small business like a truck dealership, be successful. That's where our focus is, and that's where we really emphasize our company.
It's fantastic, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to have you on this podcast, because that's what we're all about. We want to be specific to the dealer in all aspects of the dealer. When we first started getting into this, there were a lot of specific podcasts or newsletters or blogs, but they all focused on either one department or maybe higher up management. It wasn't the everyday, day in, day out operations of a full dealership. So we definitely appreciate you coming on. And you mentioned how you have access to all that data. And one of the biggest questions we've had come through after our first podcast is what's going on in the industry right now, the climate. Some people are scared, some people aren't worried. It seems to be a mix of everything right now. So we wanted to have you come on and kind of give us your take on what you see going on out there.
And real quick too, Lucas, thank you, by the way. You are our first guest on our second episode. So thank you for stepping into that role and looking forward to seeing where we can go today and what we can talk about. So,
well, anyway, that's fantastic.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. As for where the market is today, it's an interesting question because it's not an easy one to answer. I think if you look at order numbers, you can clearly see orders are down, but there continues to be optimism for the second half of the year and moving forward. There's also some belief that some of the drop we've seen in orders over the last couple of months is very much a short-term thing, sort of just waiting out the tariff situation. And as that's resolved, those orders will immediately come back. Obviously, it depends on who you talk to, but generally speaking, we're in a situation where the 4 North American Class 8 truck OEMs revenues were all down anywhere from 5 to 15% in Q1. Everybody saw drops in sales. Some people were down 5 to 10%. Others were down 20% or more in sales. They made some money back with fixed op parts and service. But revenue was down across the board in Q1 for truck OEMs. And if revenue is down for truck OEMs, it's probably down for truck dealers as well. Truck sales, Class 8 truck sales in April were around 8,000 units for preliminary orders, which obviously we know orders do not equal sales. But orders being down to 8,000 units or 7,500 to 8,000 units, it's the lowest we've seen since May of 2020. So orders generally, April's kind of the end of the seasonal peak, and then we would generally tail off in the summer. So we were expecting a drop down, but April over the last 7 years, according to FDR, has averaged about 18,000 units. So to go from that 18,000 average down to 7,600 is a pretty huge jump. Like I said, though, there is optimism moving forward. Orders for Traton and International were up in Q1. Orders for Volvo Group were up in Q1. So there is some hope from some manufacturers that maybe the trucks that they didn't deliver in Q1, they might deliver later. There's also from some of the other manufacturers, PACCAR and Daimler, they've said, we expect 2025 to maybe be down from where we had anticipated earlier in the year, but we think we'll make some of that back in 2026. We're in this situation now where everyone's kind of waiting out the trade situation, and are we going to solve the stuff with China? Are we going to solve importing it, or will we get some consistency there? Because I think that's all anyone really wants is consistency. I think the big problem with what happened in March and April was tariffs would go in, they would come back out. We would realize it doesn't apply to trucks, it applies to automotive. A lot of people I've talked to, dealers, are saying, we're just kind of going to sit back. We're going to take orders as they come in. We're going to support our customers from a parts and service perspective with everything they need. And what the dealers are telling me is that the carriers want to move their equipment. They want to get new trucks. They're still dealing with trucks that they bought at the beginning of the pandemic, or they already had, that they need to get out from under, or they extended their trade cycles in the early years of the pandemic and they're trying to get back to their conventional trade cycles. So carriers want to offload their old equipment. They want to cycle their equipment through. They just don't want to do it in a situation where freight is down 5, 10, 15%, like it's been here over the last couple months. Freight demand and tonnage, I think ATA tonnage went up in February, but then it dropped off again in March. If we could get 2 or 3 consecutive months of strong freight tonnage improvements, I think carriers would feel a little bit more confident about, hey, the market's kind of bouncing back a little bit. Let's put those orders in that we normally would have placed in March and April. Maybe we place them in June or July. So we're hopeful that as we get into the second half of the year, we'll start to see those orders come through. And things will start to pick up. But right now, it's definitely a little soft from a new vehicle or new asset purchasing perspective.
That's what we're seeing too out there in the market right now. Now, let me ask you a question. Well, actually, 2 questions. Do you see any difference between the market in North America as far as in the U.S. and Canada? And you talked a lot about the truck and the truck manufacturers. What do you see going on in the trailer world right now also?
Well, the trailer space was holding pretty well until we got our April orders. We got our April preliminary orders from FTR really about 20 minutes ago before you and I jumped on this call, and they were down 50% month over month. So again, trailer orders are generally follow the seasonal pattern as well. They were going to fall, but to see that kind of leads me to think it's the same situation that it was with the trucks, that people were putting in for some replacement demand there in January, February, March. And we got into the situation with sort of the tit for tat with China, and people said, let's just wait a little bit. Again, we got some confirmation on good news as it relates to U.S.-Chinese relations and tariffs with dropping the number down to 30%. Was that last week or the week before? That's shown some positivity in the stock market. Hopefully that creates some positivity at the ports. And positivity at the ports would be huge for the trailer business as well as the truck business, because I've talked to a lot of dealers and I've talked to some fleets that are saying, a certain segment of my business was going in and out of the ports, and if there's no ships coming in, I can't drive across and have no load coming back. So if those new tariff numbers stay where they are, or they continue to be amended down, I would think 4 to 6 weeks we'll start seeing a real influx in product into the port. And once we see that influx into the port, or we see that influx in freight, all those trailer orders are going to come back, because the trailer market is not as sensitive as the truck market is in making those capital expenditures. So if you're worried about, I don't know if I can afford to make a 200 truck order, I can probably still make my trailer order once I see that freight bounce back. So I don't think the trailer market will fall as hard as the truck market did. And I also think it will bounce back probably a little faster, or I'm hopeful it will.
It makes sense. You figure, and I agree with everything you said, just based on the trend. I think a lot of dealers, a lot of people, even from fleets, customers are just very skeptical right now and timid about the market. And they really just don't want to, they'd rather tiptoe in as opposed to just jump in with 2 feet. So I agree, late quarter 3, quarter 4, if things keep trending the way they're going, I think we should be okay. That's what I said.
The other thing that I've heard, and this has come from truck dealers, trailer dealers, also my aftermarket audience, but to some degree, they're just telling me what they hear from their customers. If it's 3 to 6 months of, hey, we're going to figure out this trade unbalance, and we're going to figure out what's right for the U.S. and if we need to make a change here and we need to make a change here. If it's 3 to 6 months, we can kind of wait on this. We'll run with the trucks we have. We'll come back to our trusted partners for parts and service. And then we'll start making our truck orders and trailer orders when we feel a little bit more comfortable. So I think we're probably in like month 3 of that. If we get into sort of July and August and things have normalized, I think business will come back pretty quickly. If we're sitting here September and October and we're still kind of seeing what we see now, then people will get a little bit more nervous. But I think a lot of people are willing to give the administration 6 months to say, see what you need to do here. We'll wait for you, and hopefully you can meet us where we need to be before we get to the end of the year. So,
Yeah.
Fingers crossed, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny too, because, and Chris, maybe you can expand on this here in a minute, but I know with us being on the road and seeing as many dealers as we do, it's really strange how, especially if you go into a big dealer group where you're talking 20 or more stores, and the stores are spread out, especially if they're spread out among different states or different provinces up in Canada, the difference in the business from one store to the next. There are some stores that are just absolutely killing it right now, and other stores that are dying.
Mhm.
So, not only do we have the tariffs and everything going on there, we have the trade uncertainty, but the market itself is so volatile right now, just from one county to the next, one state to the next. I don't know if you're seeing that also, but Chris, maybe you got something else to add to that.
Yeah, no, you're right. Speaking with a dealer the other day, and they were saying, half their stores they're spread apart pretty far, and half of their stores are doing fantastic. They had a banner month last month, and then the other 3 that they have are struggling mightily right now. So there's no rhyme or reason, or just really how or why. It's just very regionalized, I guess, is the best way to say what I'm seeing anyway out there right now. Scary, but at the end of the day, in our industry over time, it's peaks and valleys, right?
Yep.
And where are we right now? I think that is one of the hardest things. Where are we? Are we starting to come back up to a peak, or are we going on the downward side? It's just I can't answer that.
I mean, I feel like if you look at the orders and sales from Q1, we're definitely we're closer to a valley than we are to a peak. The question is, how long are we in the valley, and does it become you're down, you go back the next day, or do you sit down here for a while? And I think everyone's hope is first of all, hopefully the valley's not as deep as it could be, but hopefully we get out of it quickly. So we'll see. One positive I would say is used truck demand is up, both in sales and in price. Truck was pretty much up across the board in March and April. The used truck dealers, as you know, 2023 and 2024 were not kind of the used truck space. They appear to be on their way to an ascent, and that would speak to the fact that carriers are wanting equipment. They're just maybe not comfortable with that $180,000, $200,000 new truck purchase. But if they can go out and get 8 to 10 used trucks to support what they're doing, support their operations, they're willing to make that purchase right now. So I think that's a good sign. The other thing we didn't talk about earlier is the impact of regulation on truck sales. And I think that has a big location situation as well. If you're and now there's only 4 states that are still doing it, but if you're one of those 4 states that's committed to the CARB regulation, the ACT regulation, where you have to be selling a ZEV, a battery electric, to have the opportunity to sell a diesel, and that is California, obviously, Washington, New York, and New Jersey, they're really struggling to take orders right now. If you're a dealer in one of those states, it's hard. Now, if you're a dealer that's in one of those states, but is also in one of the other states that surrounds that, you can kind of work around that, as you can sort of push orders into Nevada, or Oregon is now off the rule. If you're in the Northeast, you can go to Pennsylvania or something. But again, it speaks to the fact that if I'm a truck dealer and my location is in New Jersey, I'm getting killed, but my competitor in Philadelphia, 30 miles from me, is taking all my business.
Right.
Or,
Yeah.
Maybe I'm lucky that I'm in New Jersey and I have a location in Pennsylvania and I can send my customers there, but that's not a good way to run a business. I think there's a lot of people that intended to purchase trucks or order trucks here in Q1, Q2, thinking there was going to be a pre-buy ahead of 2027. I don't think we anticipated that was going to be a huge pre-buy, but we thought it'd have an impact on the market. And now with all the rollbacks in individual states and the House voting to repeal CARB's regulation authority, which still has to go through the Senate and President Trump to be approved, if you're a carrier, you're thinking, well, if I don't have to buy the 2027 equipment yet, and I can wait until July to place my order and just buy the regular engine I've been running, I might wait a couple months. Now, if we get 2-3 months down the line and the Senate and President Trump don't repeal the California regulations and they stay in place, then you might see some carriers say, look, if I'm going to have to deal with this, I'll go order the trucks now, but I can afford to wait a couple months to see if a rollback happens. So that's a lot of location specific, but the pre-buy is a larger problem, but the current ACT is very location specific.
Yeah.
Well, and you mentioned too, with new truck sales and trailer sales being off right now, it's increasing the used truck market.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, when the used truck market increases, so does parts and service, because you have to be able to repair those used trucks that are on the road, because now they're starting to get to that point where it's past that, 2 to 3 year window where they're covered under warranty. So hopefully, that business will pick up. And of course, parts and service, that's what covers the absorption in a dealership. So if the used truck sales are up, that's a good thing for parts and service.
But you sorry, Lucas, and just a tag on to Jeremy there. You said that, sales are up and used, but, I'm wondering how long or how sustainable that will be with supply, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, that's true. If we're not selling or delivering new trucks, we're not getting new used trucks. In the price for the 2023 and 2022 model year, used trucks was very strong last month. We saw from ACT Research, which puts that data out on Friday, that it was specifically strong in that area. I think I've heard the same thing from JD Power in the wholesale market. But yeah, that's going to be a problem. And again, it speaks to the idea of hopefully whatever's happening on a new order perspective doesn't last very long, and we get into Q3 or something like that, July, August, and we start seeing those orders. Which again, orders in July don't equate to sales in July. Everybody knows that, but hopefully whatever happens from an orders perspective is from a downswing is minimized, and we can start getting some units pushed into the used truck market, because then prices will jump pretty fast.
It's so amazing to me how this industry just continually evolves, peaks, valleys, like you guys were saying, and we just keep rolling. It's not going away. We need trucks in order to move freight around this country and in Canada. So it's always going to be there, and it's always going to be relatively solid. We've really enjoyed having you on the podcast today. The insights you can bring are just amazing. And I know for me personally, every day, I love seeing that TPS, trucks, parts, service come up. Gives me a quick hit of what's going on in the market, what's going on with different dealers, especially if there's any recalls or anything. What are some of the ways people can get in contact with you, or to get signed up to have that right into their email every day?
Well, the easy way, just go to truckpartsandservice.com. I can send you the link. You can tout that out afterwards, but truckpartsandservice.com is the website. And you can sign up there. You can get our newsletter. Our newsletter is free. Everything we do supporting our audience is free. You just have to sign up, put in your email. The newsletter will come that day, and you'll get it moving forward. If people want to get news out to our space, we get news from dealers, we get news from independents, we get news from suppliers, manufacturers. They can send all that to me. That's just my name, Lucas Deal @fusible.com. We're always looking for news. We're always looking for information. We're looking for useful sources, people that we can go to when we're trying to source, hey, what does the market look like? We're always looking for people we can call. But yeah, I would love to have anybody who's interested reach out, sign up for the newsletter. If they have any questions for me, feel free to reach out to me. But we're always trying to stay in front of the dealers. And that's the other thing we want to do is what TPS does is not catered specifically to an executive. There's a lot of good executive content there. And if you're running a business and we do a piece on succession planning, or we do a piece on like a high level topic, maybe that intrigues an owner or dealer principal maybe more than the guy at the counter, but it's still useful for him to learn how that works. And we'll do a lot of stuff on, doing cycle counts in your inventory, or we'll do something on training a new person on the counter, or, hey, if you've got an outside sales team that's growing, how do you do that properly? How do you find the person that works inside and decide if they can work outside? So I think the content that we have, once you're in a dealership and you want to grow your career in that dealership, there is something every day or every week for you on TPS, and we're trying to get that to you any way we can.
Yeah, no, it's a great publication. Like I said, I enjoy it immensely. Do you have anything else for Lucas today?
No, really appreciate the insight that you brought. I know that there's a lot of people hungry for this type of stuff out there and they don't always know where to find it. So really appreciate that insight and given that, we'll make sure that your links up where everyone can go and find you.
That's
Really appreciate
fantastic.
it.
Lucas, hopefully we can call on you again in the future to come back on and share some more thoughts with us. Well, that'll do it for the second official episode of the Heavy Duty Podcast. If you need to get in touch with us, the links will be at the bottom of the screen. You can either email us or send us a message online. And as always, the Heavy Duty Podcast wouldn't be possible without KEA Advisors, bringing dealership profit. KEA Advisors is a place to go when you need help with your dealership. All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks, everyone. Yep. Bye.